Voices from the Gold Road, Medieval Mali, Ghana, and Songhai. It's a beautiful day today here in the metropolitan DC area. I personally am in Maryland, and it's very sunny here, very unlike yesterday morning. I hope it's beautiful where you are. And again, thank you so much for your patience yesterday morning with the technical difficulties that we were experiencing amidst the storm. I hope today will be different. My name is Vanessa Oyugi, and with me is Brenda Randolph again. We will be introducing you to three wonderful presenters today. Let me actually go back to that page of the agenda. How do I do that? Ooh, there we go. Three wonderful presenters today. We're starting with Mr. Siddiqui Traore, who will be guiding you into the Mande language family. We have Dr. David Conrad, Medieval Africa Roads, Routes, and as Conduits of Culture. And we have the wonderful Lucina Martin, who will be doing two presentations, Elements of Praise Poetry, and guiding you through some ideas for activities and your homework assignment tomorrow in connecting to the Gold Road at about 12 o'clock. And of course, we have the wonderful Helen Bond, who was there yesterday, and she will be the moderator today through the Q&A. I do ask that you mute yourself today. And as we learned yesterday, it is helpful if you stop your video, at least during the presentations. I hear that that does allow for better sound quality. So while folks are presenting, if we could just both mute and stop our videos, that would be very helpful. And so I shall begin. And in fact, let me escape through here and give you another slide. Oop. There we go. It's right back here. All right. And introduce to you the next presenter. His name is Siddiqui Traore. Now, we know him from 2018. He was a presenter in a summer institute we did in August of 2018, and he gave a fascinating presentation on protecting the Timbuktu manuscripts, the roots of the 2012 conflicts. Today, he will be giving a presentation on the Mande language family. Siddiqui Traore is currently the president and founder of Distance Education for Africa, DAfrica. Prior to that, he worked for the African Virtual University for 12 years. He occupied the position of director of the West Africa Regional Office in Dakar of the AVU in Dakar, Senegal, for 5 years. His main professional goal is to contribute his expertise as a seasoned educator, instructional designer, cross-cultural liaison, and translator to the development of quality long-distance education for Africa by developing and strengthening the network of distance education for Africa. Let's please welcome Mr. Siddiqui Traore.
Vanessa, are you showing his screen? Are you sharing?
Yes, I shall. Okay.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for this presentation. What we are going to do today, we're going to learn, I'm going to teach you two basic things. I'm going to teach you the basic greeting in Barbara, and then also a simple introduction. As you know, in Africa, greetings are extremely important because you cannot do any business without saying hi or good morning to people. I think most people know that, you know, greeting is incredibly important. So we're gonna start with, yeah, it's gonna be difficult because, you know, there are so many people, but, you know, we could try to see at least.
Mr. Traore, could you show your video so the participants can see you?
Okay. All right. Can you see me now? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So we're gonna start with a basic greeting and then the introduction. So here we go. In Barbara, you start with a greeting by Ini Sokwa. Ini Sokwa. So let me just say first, then we're gonna repeat. Okay. So the first part is a simple, just good morning, Ini Sokwa. if you look at, E, you, me, and Sogoma is morning, you and the morning. So it's very easy. Ini Sogoma. So once you say Ini Sogoma to someone, the response depends whether you a male or a female. If it's a male, you respond Mba. Mba. Ini Sogoma, Mba for men, and Mse for women. Okay. Ini Sogoma, Mba, Mse. Okay, everyone got that one? Can we try
having a
that
bit
one?
of trouble hearing you. Is everybody experiencing that?
Can you hear me now?
That is better.
Okay, all right, yeah. So, Ini Sogoma, you and the morning, Ini Sogoma, and the response, it depends whether you a man or a woman. So for men, the answer is Mba. Mba. And for women, it's Mse. Mse. Okay? All right, let's try that one together. Ini Sogoma, together. Ini Sogoma.
Ini Sogoma.
Ini Sogoma.
Again, Ini Sogoma.
Ini Sogoma.
Perfect. Perfect.
Sogoma.
Perfect. Okay, for men, you said Mba. So I would say Ini Sogoma, men would say Mba. Okay, let's do that again. Ini Sogoma.
Mba.
Again.
Mba.
Ini Sogoma.
Ini
Mba.
Mba.
Okay, perfect. Now for women, women will say Mse. Mse.
Mse.
Mse. Okay, let's do that together. Mse.
Mse.
Perfect. Again, Ini Sogoma. Mse.
Ini Sogoma.
Mse.
Perfect. Okay. Now for women, Ini Sogoma.
Mse.
Okay. But perfect. Now women would greet me by good morning. So you say to me Ini Sogoma, and I would respond Mba. Okay, let's go.
Ini Sogoma.
Mba. Perfect. Again.
Ini Sogoma.
Perfect. Okay. And I would say Ini Sogoma. Perfect.
Ini Sogoma.
Bon, perfect. Okay, so everyone got that one. Ini Sogoma, Mba.
Ini Sogoma.
Ini Sogoma.
Again. Ini Sogoma. Together.
Ini
Ini Sogoma.
Perfect.
Mba.
Mba for men. Mba.
Mba.
Nse for men.
Mse.
Nse. Okay. Bon, perfect. Now we know just the basic greeting. Now, I have really reduced the greeting because, the greeting is so long in Africa. It takes long, So when you just don't say to someone, Ini Sogoma, Mba, Ini Sogoma, you have to ask how the person is. Ika kenewa.
Ika
Kenewa.
kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Ika
Kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Perfect. Ika kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Perfect. Okay. And the answer is Torosite.
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 Perfect. Again. Ika kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So I would say Ika kenewa. You would say Torosite. And then you will ask me how I am, Ika kenewa, and I will say Torosite. Okay. Let's go. Ika kenewa.
Torosite.
Again. Ika kenewa.
Torosite.
Okay. Now you ask me how I am.
Ika kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Torosite.
Kenewa.
Torosite. Perfect.
Torosite.
Okay. Now let's combine these 4 sentences. So we learn ini sogoma, ini sogoma mba or mse, and then ikakenewa toros. Okay, let's do that 4 sentences together. Okay. Ini sogoma.
Nise inisikoma.
Inisigoma.
Okay. Ikakenewa.
Ikakenewa.
Torosite.
Torosite. Okay, perfect. Okay, now you guys start with inisogoma and I will do this round. Okay, let's do it together.
Inisikoma.
Inisigoma.
Inisogoma.
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 Now ask me how I am doing.
Ikakenewa.
Kenewa. Ikakenewa.
Torosite.
Torosike.
Torosite. Torosite.
Torosite.
Okay? Okay, let's repeat these 4 sentences. So the first one is inisogoma mba inisogoma. Inisogoma mse inisogoma. Ikakenewa torosite. Ikakenewa torosite. Okay? Let's go.
Inisogoma.
Mba.
Inisogoma.
Ikakenewa.
Kenewa.
Ikakenewa.
Torosite.
Torosike.
Okay, perfect. Okay, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna just jump the rest. I'm gonna just go to the other introduction, you know, so we won't do the rest, you know, so I want to simplify it. So the second part is just a simple introduction of, you know, what's your name? My name is, what's your last name? Very simple, and goodbye, okay? So let's look at the second part. The second part is a simple in Bambara, what's your name is I, your, and Togo. So you name, it's very easy. So by asking someone, what's your name? You just said you name, that's it. So Itogo. Itogo.
Itogo.
Let's
Itogo.
repeat. Itogo. Again. Itogo.
Itogo.
And then we answer Ntogo Bob.
Itogo Bob.
Togo. Alicia.
Right.
Ntogo Greg.
Okay. Okay. Now let's go. Yeah. So Itogo together. Itogo.
Itogo.
Togo.
Itogo.
Ntogo Bob or Felicia.
Itogo Bob.
Togo Greg.
Togo Kelly.
Okay. Wow. Traveling. So if I just ask Felicia, for instance, I said, Itogo.
Togo Alicia.
Togo Greg.
Okay.
Togo Kelly.
Okay. Perfect. So now you know that Ntogo, you know, with Itogo, Ntogo, Bob. Okay. Now for the last name, Ijamu, Jamu. Jamu. You
Jamu.
Ijamu.
Ijamu.
Jamu.
Ijamu Brown.
Ijamu
Jamu
Brown.
Davis.
Jamu
Jamu
Davis.
Brown.
Jamu Fox.
Martin.
Jamu?
Okay.
Jamu Hall.
Jamu Brown.
Jamu Hazelwood.
Jamu Brown. Jamu Fox.
Oh, okay. Perfect. So we repeat again. Itogo.
Itogo.
Togo.
Ntogo Bob.
Itogo Bob.
Togo Greg.
Ijamu.
Ijamu.
Jamu.
Jamu Brown.
Jamu Brown.
Jamu Hazelwood.
Jamu Brown.
Okay. All right. Let's do those 4 sentences together. Okay. So why don't Monica, you ask Joanne?
Okay. Ini sogoma.
Okay, Joanne.
Intogo Joanne.
Felicia is starting with the greetings, right? You want to combine both, but let's do the second part first, and then we move to the second. Yeah, let's do the name first, the introduction. I see you trying to. Yeah.
Okay, Itogo.
Wait, Felicia.
Oh, Alicia?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I didn't know if there was a Felicia that was lower down. Okay. In Togo, Alicia.
Okay, perfect. Okay, keep on. Continue with last name.
Ijamu.
Mhm.
In Jammu Hall.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so everyone got that one? Okay. Now let's finish that part. Actually, it would be nice, you know, to just say thank you and goodbye. Okay. I don't. Yeah. Thank you. So thank you is at the end. Iniche. Iniche.
Iniche.
Iniche.
Iniche.
Iniche.
Nse iniche.
Iniche. Iniche.
Okay.
Iniche mba.
Okay. Let's practice together again. Iniche together. Iniche.
Iniche.
Mba iniche.
Mba iniche.
Iniche.
Nse iniche.
Iniche.
Okay. Okay. Now let's try David and Lesina. You know, try, you know, the second part, you know, like the last, what's your name? And then you thank the person. Okay, let's go.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your name? Itogo.
Togo Lesina.
Perfect. Keep going.
Ijamu.
Jamu Martin.
Okay, right. Continue.
Iniche.
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 Nse Iniche.
Perfect.
Kaben.
Kamben. Goodbye. Kamben. Again together. Kamben. Okay. Perfect. Okay, let's do it again. All right. We select another person. How about Helen and Caleb? I don't see the name of everyone. Is Caleb in? Okay. All right. Caleb is not in. So let's finish the introduction. Then we'll go back. We do the greeting. Good morning. How are you doing? I'm fine. And then Itogo. So we combine both. Okay. So this is how we're gonna do it. Ini sogoma, mba ini sogoma, mse ini sogoma, ikakenewa torosite. Itogo, ntogo bob, ijamu, njamu bob, iniche, mba iniche, mse kambe. So we're gonna combine everything. Okay, let's just repeat together first, and then I'm gonna select people to do it. Okay, we start with a greeting. Okay, together. Ini sogoma.
Ini sogoma.
Again, ini sogoma.
Ini sogoma.
Perfect. And for men, mba ini sogoma.
Ba ini sogoma.
For women, nse ini sogoma.
Nse Sogoma.
Perfect. Ika kenewa. Everyone.
Ika kenewa.
Again, ika kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Torosite.
Torosite.
Again, ika kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Torosite.
Torosite.
Itogo. Ntoko bob.
Itogo Tanisha.
Ijamu. Njamu brown. Iniche. Mba iniche.
Nse Iniche.
Kamben. Okay. Perfect. Now, Ellen, you want, you know, I'm gonna do it with Ellen, and then we select other people. Okay. So Ellen, we start with Inisogoma. So you start.
Inisogoma.
Mba Inisogoma.
Niche.
Ask me how I am doing.
Okay.
Ika kenewa.
Kenewa.
Torosite. Ika kenewa.
Torosite.
Okay. Keep going now to the introduction.
Itogo.
Ntogo Sidiki. Itogo.
Intogo Helen.
Okay. Keep going.
Ijamu.
Njamu Traore.
Injamu Bonds.
Now you're gonna
Iniche.
Mba Iniche. Kambe.
Inse Iniche. Come back.
Now Kambe.
Come back.
Oh, perfect. You did it. Perfect.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Let's find two other people. I don't see the name of everyone. Can someone volunteer? I want.
I can volunteer.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
I also will volunteer.
Okay, perfect. Okay, you guys go.
Inisigoma.
Inse Inisogoma.
Perfect.
Nise Inisigoma.
Ika Kenewa.
Ike kenewa.
Torosite.
Itogo.
God.
Intogo Alicia. Itogo.
Intogo Tajila.
Ijamu.
Injamu Olaya. Ijamu.
Injamu Hall.
Iniche.
Nise Iniche.
Kamben.
Kaben.
Perfect. That's great. Perfect. Let's have applause for them. Okay, let's find two other people.
I'll volunteer.
Okay, perfect. And
Me too.
okay, perfect.
Inisogoma.
Inisogoma. Inse. Inisogoma.
Akekenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Ika kenewa.
Torosite. Ika kenewa.
Torosite. Itogo.
Ntogo Lucia. Itogo.
Ntogo Samuel. Ijamu.
Njamu Minervini. Njamu.
Njamu Surafel. Kamben.
Kamben.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Let's find other people to practice. Some other volunteers.
I'll try.
Okay. All right, Kelly, and someone else.
I will.
Okay. All right.
Inisogoma.
Nse Inisogoma. Inisogoma.
Nse. Inisogoma. Ika kenewa.
Torosite. Ika kenewa.
Torosite. Itogo.
Ntogo Kelly. Itogo.
Intogo Alisa. Ijamu.
Njamu Davis. Ijamu.
Njamu Cunningham. Iniche.
Iniche.
Kanben.
Kamben.
Perfect. So everyone got that one? Any questions so far? Can we add more, Brenda, can we ask this, I wanted to add more sentence, like where you from, so that people could say, I am from Maryland or something, just a simple.
Yes.
Do you have time to add that? Wait.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So the question is, Ibe Bomi, where are you from? Ibe Bomi.
Would you spell it for me?
Okay,
E.
And then E, like, you know, like in not the E, the like a simple I, no I.
Oh, I, sorry, okay.
Okay, so I, and then another sentence, another word, yeah. Be, B-E. Ibe, another word. Ibe bo, B-O. Ibe, bo. Ibe bo. Just one bear. You wrote two bear. You remove one. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Ibe bo min, M-I-N. It's a spread word. Yeah. Min. Min. M-I-N. Yes. Perfect. So that's a simple, where are you from? Ibe bo mi. So mi is where from. That's very simple. Ibe bo mi. And then the answer, Mbebo, Michigan. Mbebo, it's an N.
Oh, N.
N. Mbebo, Michigan. Mbebo, Michigan. Okay, yeah, that's it. So we're gonna add that one to our conversation. So we're gonna just do the greetings, then the introduction, and then where are you from? Ibebomi, Mbebo, Michigan. Okay.
Is that enough to see everything? Hold on, let me see if I can fit it all so you can see everything. Hold on.
Okay.
Make it a bit smaller, and then. Sorry. Let me actually take out some of the spaces so you can see it. Let's see what happens when you click on focus. There we go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so here we go. So we're gonna add the last part. Let's repeat that together. Very simple. Where are you from? Ibebomi, together.
Ibebomi.
Again.
Ibebomi.
Mbebo, California.
Ibebo, Missouri.
Mauritius.
Okay. Okay. Again. Ibebomi. Mbebo, Michigan.
Mbebo, Massachusetts.
Los Angeles. Mbebo, Maryland.
Okay. So now we're gonna combine everything we learned this morning from Inisogoma, Ba Inisogoma.
Inisogoma.
Okay, let's repeat together, and then I'm gonna have two people to practice. Okay, let's together. Inisogoma.
Inisogoma.
Ba Inisogoma.
Mba Inisogoma.
Nse Inisogoma.
Inisogoma.
Okay. Ika Kenewa. Torosite. Itogo. Itogo Bob. Ijamu. Njamu Brown. Iniche.
Iniche.
Kamben. Let's add Ibebomi first, and then we use Kamben at the end. Ibebomi. Mbebo, Michigan.
Mbebo, Missouri.
Massachusetts. Okay. Kamben. Okay. Now we have a greetings, introduction, and where are you from? Okay, let's put all this together. I need 2 volunteers to do it.
I volunteer.
Okay, Monica, perfect. Okay. Thank you, Monica. Monica and who?
Laura.
Okay, Laura. Okay. Let's go.
Inisogoma.
Inesogoma.
Perfect.
Ikakenewa.
Ika Kenewa.
Torosite. Ike Kenewa.
Torosite. Somogodun?
I don't think we learned that part. Eh?
Oh, okay.
No, we didn't learn that part because I made it short.
Okay.
So I jumped that part to the, you know, to the second part.
Okay. Itogo?
Ntogo, Laura. Itogo?
Itogo, Monica.
Ntogo, Monica.
Ijamu?
Njamu, Magno. Ijamu?
Ijamu, Yutsi.
Njamu, Yutsi.
Njamu, Yutsi.
Okay.
Iniche?
Oh, Iniche. Or Ense Iniche.
Iniche.
Okay.
I Bobomin?
Imbebo, Washington, D.C.
Perfect. And then, you know, say thank you and goodbye.
Iniche.
Kanben. Iniche. Kanben. Iniche.
Ense Iniche Kanben.
Right. Perfect. Okay. Now, I think we put all the things together. Brenda, I think I had 30 minutes, right, for my presentation.
Yes, we can have some questions. Does anybody have any questions? Dr. Helen Bond will be moderating. And so if you have any questions about the presentation, please go ahead and put those in the chat.
Good morning. Thank you, Siddiqui, for that that wonderful recitation this morning. You indeed are a master of that language. We have two questions at least that focus around some of the gendered responses. One of the questions said, are the responses, are they the only ones that contain the gendered response? For example, Inisanoma, good morning. Is it only when you respond? Is it a gendered response? And my question to that, is that common? I know it's common in Spanish, but is that common across other languages? Thank you.
Well, that's a very good question. The gender in Bambara language, it's a very simple, you know, because really there is no gender specifically in Bambara in terms of if you have he or she, it's only a. So a is used for she or he because the Bambara language doesn't make a distinction because sometimes even myself, when I want to talk about, you know, she did that or her, I use he and people laugh at me because I'm mixing he and she, you know, because in Bambara there is only one word, a. Atogo, his name, itogo, atogo, his name, or atogo, her name. But in the greeting, it's just in the answer for the greeting, there is a distinction in gender in Bambara. So women usually say mse, and men say mba. So other than that, no, the Bambara language doesn't have a gender.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. We did have a question around the N sound. One questioner asked, the text says N, but Siddiqui appears to be using the M sound. I'm assuming in the gender response of the male and female response.
Oh, okay. Okay, it's really it's the sound. It's N N Nse Nse Mba. It's
Mba.
It's the yes. The sound is Nse Mba.
So not typical to the N sound that we would normally think of in the English language.
Yes, yes. You know, because this sound is really important in many African languages. You found that language, you know, that sound, which is not in a Romance, language. Even the N itself is like I or me. So, Togo, my name is Sidiki. So, you see the distinction also with the could be I or me. So Bambara doesn't, it's a very simple language. So the could be I or me. Yeah. But in the sound for the greeting answer, it's ba, se, se. That's how it sounds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for that. The next question, we have a questioner that's asking about linguistic equivalence for inse and mbe. They can't seem to find it. So is there any linguistic equivalent to English? I think the questioner is asking.
Actually, there's no specific equivalent, because in English, you just, when you say, hello, you say, the answer is hello. So there is no specific equivalent. Even in French, when you say bonjour, it's bon, good, and there's no equivalent in English. So sometimes, that's really the structure, the way the language is structured. So, you may not have a specific equivalent in other languages. I think it goes around with, all kinds of the languages. If you take the term computer, you will find computer. People don't have the equivalent of computer in their language. So you hear the sound of computer in their language because there is no equivalent. So it's the same thing with Bambara. I don't think there is any linguistic equivalent for mba and nse in English. It's just the response for men and women. So,
thank you.
But it just means, hello, hello. You're just responding.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to group these two questions together for the sake of time. What is the difference between Bambara and Mande? Is Mande a larger language family? And excuse me if I didn't pronounce that correctly. Do we have a sense of how the language has changed since the medieval era?
Well, Bambara and Mandingo, the Manding language is wide, and because when you talk about the Manding language, you're talking about it's really, it has spread because people studied from Mali, they moved to Senegal, to the Gambia, and then so the language spread throughout the years. So when you talk about Mande language, in Mali, we call it Bambara. In Ivory Coast, we call it Jula. But it's the same language. It's just, vocabulary different. In the Gambia, they call it Mandingo. So with the Mandingo in the Gambia, for instance, the vocabulary could be different from, and sometimes I may understand what someone from the Gambia is saying, but the term Sogo, S-O-G-O, Sogo means meat. In Bambara, we say Sogo, but in the Gambia, they said Sobu. So there is a slight difference. It's like British English and American English. So the Mande language, has gone across West Africa because of trade. So it has really changed. And so it's spoken all over West Africa. So Burkina Faso and Ivory Coast is called Jula. In Mali, it's called Bambara. In Guinea, it's called Malenke. And the Gambia is called the Mandingo. but it's the same family language. It's a big family language. It has changed throughout the years.
Thank you. We'd like to just get one more question in. Our time is almost up. Which grammar, which dictionaries, materials, resources would you recommend for getting a better grasp of the Bambara language?
Okay, I can show you. Actually, there is this. If you see, this is the book I used. I taught Bambara at Indiana University for 6 years. So this is the book I used. So Indiana University has lots of material, and this book was written by Dr. Charles Bird and John Hutchinson who is at the VU, and Mamadou Kante, a friend of mine. So they wrote this. This is a fabulous book from Indiana University, to teach the, that's the book I use. There is also the advanced Bambara. So this is the beginner.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's 9:40, so we'll transition. Thank you for the questioners.
Thank you so much, Siddiqui. Thank you, Helen. That was just a really fun presentation. I'll be enlisting my husband and my children this afternoon to practice with me. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
So everyone, we'll give you about 2 minutes to refresh your coffee, grab some water as we set up the next presentation. It's a beautiful PowerPoint. It's very data heavy, so we want to make sure that it's up and running by the time you come back. So it's 9:42 right now. By 9:44, let's just be back. And in the meantime, Dr. Conrad, if you can put up your presentation, and when we all return, I will introduce you. And let me know if you need some help. I can also share it if you like.
And Dr. Conrad, you can unmute yourself. So
we do see you.
Barbara, if you were talking, unmute yourself.
Click on the Zoom icon. There we go.
Hello, I think.
There.
Okay, I am trying to get to the video. So you're not seeing this, right?
Yeah, we do. We do see it now.
Oh, you do?
We do see your presentation. Yes, we do.
That's
wonderful. Is it in presentation mode? Could you click on presentation mode at the bottom of, yes, there we go, at the top as well. Yep, that works right there. Perfect, and just keep it on that slide. And let's see, what time is it? We'll give everybody 1 more minute.
Okay.
Looks good.
This more, you don't have to be in this. This is what they're seeing. This is what they're seeing without that, or kind of, that's kind of there.
Thank you, Barbara.
And this is Brenda. We just want to thank you because everybody, if you're around, they're in California. So this is a really early call for them.
Goodness, yes.
And they were practicing all week on this. So we're going to.
I have a question.
Sure.
I have a question.
Sure, Barbara.
So what I'm seeing on our screen is the video presentation slide, and then I'm seeing, like four little gallery squares. Is that what everybody's seeing?
Yes.
All right. So it's going to interfere with our presentation, but that's
you're seeing that other people, you can minimize that if you don't want to see it, Barbara, and everybody's kind of in charge of their own screen at this point about what they see.
We're not seeing we're not seeing four squares. We're not seeing four squares.
The images of people, of David Conrad and I
think, okay.
I think it should be fine. Does everybody see the presentation? Medieval West African roads and routes. Yes, okay, great, wonderful. Well, let me get started. David Conrad has been so invaluable to us. He's been invaluable as a supporter, as a consultant to the Voices from the Gold Road project, all the projects we've been working on in the last couple of months. Many of the pictures that you see in our Gold Road website are from his travels to West Africa. So we're eternally grateful for everything that he has been doing for us. David Conrad is Emeritus
Sub-Saharan rulers. Mansa Musa was a latecomer in making that journey. Nevertheless, that was the pilgrimage that got the attention of people north of the Mediterranean, and just 13 years later, the event was recorded by the mapmaker Angelino Ducer in 1339. Several African rulers are shown on this map, including Mansa Musa, recorded here as Musa Meli, who wields a scepter ornamented with a fleur-de-lis. Berber-speaking people in the Western Sahara were known collectively as Sunjata, and further east they're called Tuareg. Around the 5th century, when the camel became available, they began crossing the Sahara Desert. Berber clans lived in the region known to the Arab writers as Ghana and locally as Ouagadougou, and in their day it was already known to Arab travelers as the land of gold. From the 8th century onward, trade caravans had been making the crossing annually and in increasing numbers. Berber rulers or clan chieftains made the pilgrimage several centuries ahead of the Malians. For example, Yahya ibn Ibrahim, who made the pilgrimage in 1035. Even among Malian rulers, Mansa Musa was not the first to make the pilgrimage. During the reign of the Sultan Baybars, 13th century, Mansa Wali made the journey, and he was followed by Sakura in 1300. So it wasn't until 1324, a few centuries after Sunjata chiefs were making their low-profile visits to Mecca, that the really famous pilgrimage was made by Mansa Musa. His route took him past Timbuktu, up on the Niger Bend, and northeast across the desert. That pilgrimage made by Mansa Musa was with a huge entourage, numbers of which are probably exaggerated, but it was sensational because of the vast amount of gold he took with him and distributed as payments and gifts. His caravan of hundreds of people stopped in Cairo for about a week. At this time, Cairo was an extremely sophisticated metropolis, and its citizens would not ordinarily have paid much attention to foreign travelers. But Mansa Musa was so wealthy and his country so little known to most Egyptians that his expenditures of gold and his conversations with local notables were recorded in great detail, which is why we know so much about him. Also, his arrival in Cairo carrying a ton of the yellow metal caused the market in gold to crash. Here, Mansa Musa is at the bottom of the edge of this map, just left of center. His story tells a good deal about the role of the Sahara in world history, and this famous Catalan Atlas of 1375 reflects the European fascination with African gold and knowledge of the overland routes leading to it. This detail of that map shows Mansa Musa holding a gold nugget. This was one of the first sets of European maps to provide serious information about Africa. First, it shows that by the 14th century, the Great Desert could be safely crossed, even by a mighty king carrying precious goods and accompanied by a large body of followers. Second, it indicates that the lands to the south of the Sahara were now organized into large states and that at least some of their inhabitants had become Muslim. Finally, it tells us something about the economic basis for more regular trans-Saharan travel, as Sudanic gold was of great value for both the Islamic world and Christian Europe during the Middle Ages. The traffic in gold was spurred by the demand for and supply of coinage. In England, these were called guineas. If you look closely at the bottom edge of the coins below the king's heads, you'll see a tiny elephant These coins were minted between 1663 and 1814, and much of the gold for the original issues was brought to Britain from West Africa. The traffic in gold was spurred by the demand for and supply of coinage. In England, these were called guineas, and they were brought to West Africa by the Africa Company, whose badge was an elephant and howdah, or also known to the British as a castle. So the golden guinea takes its name from the coastal area that was known as Guinea. Sorry for the delay. This is the area that was known as Guinea at the time. So Mansa Musa's famous pilgrimage took place midway through the great age of camel caravan traffic across the Sahara, which began somewhere near the end of the 8th century and ended in the early 20th century, when European-built railroads connected Sahelian Africa to the Atlantic Ocean. But the Sahara was one of the major trade routes in the world economy until the late 1400s, when Europeans first arrived on the coast of West Africa. From 1500 to 1900, its global role diminished considerably, but the amount and variety of commerce across the desert actually increased, as did its importance for the West African trade. There were two separate Sahelian routes for caravans. One was on the southern edge of the desert, running between Walata, Timbuktu, and Gao. The main product was gold, and the routes to connect northward to Sijil Massa and towns all across North Africa. The other main destination was farther east in Kano and Katsina, and that route was based in Bornu and Kanem, with links up to the Fezzan, and the primary trade was in slaves. Then after 1500, the House of People's cities of Kano and Katsina became important trading centers. Here's what Kano looked like over 50 years ago when I lived there. And this is Katsina, just to the north of Kano. There are unsubstantiated claims that the Gobero minaret was the first multi-story building in West Africa from the 14th century. Others think it came later. The goods that Mediterranean traders sent down to buyers in the south were pretty much the same things they sold in the rest of the world. Cloth, glassware, ceramic and metal housewares, paper, cheap ornamental jewelry, and so forth, beads. Not so special compared to what came back in return from the south, especially gold. But the locals didn't use gold in their own markets. The local currency was cowrie shells. A 14th century observer said, "The currency there consists of cowries, and the merchants make big profits on them." These days they still use cowries, but they use them in traditional ritual, on masks like this one, and occult objects, and for divination. And here's a modern poster for the Malian National Lottery that shows cowries as objects that are for good luck. However, there were two highly desired imports, one of which was horses. According to Alomari, the king of this country imports Arab horses and pays that price for them. His army numbers about 100,000. Of whom about 10,000 are cavalry mounted on horses. The second highly prized import was firearms, which started arriving in large numbers by the 17th century. Flintlocks, which were more reliable than matchlocks, sparked the first big wave of gun sales. All along the region, English, French, and other traders competed hard with each other to supply their African clients By the mid-18th century, some 400,000 guns were being exported annually to Africa. The second, but gold remained the most important of the Trans-Saharan commodities until the 1500s, when European competition began to draw most of the available gold into Atlantic shipping routes. After the arrival of European slave traders on the West and Central African coasts, the Trans-Saharan traffic in human beings continued and even increased. In the last 5 centuries of the major desert caravans, the system also generated significant profits from a greater variety of goods, including the hides of African megafauna like hippopotamus, elephant, crocodile, and of course, ivory. Along with ivory, ostrich feathers are usually in the lists of exports to the north because they were much in demand for ladies' hats. And there were also cola nuts, source of caffeine and secret ingredient of some popular beverages. On the desert crossings, the caravans stopped in oases where dates were grown, and those were another profitable item carried north. The textbooks often mention spices, but what spices? Not the kind we find in the markets of Morocco and Zanzibar, as seen here. One West African item that doesn't always get mentioned is from the giant baobab tree, the fruit of which is called monkey bread and is the source of cream of tartar. And here's a print showing trade in gum arabic, which is always listed among Trans-Saharan exports, as if it's an everyday thing familiar to everyone. This is the acacia tree from which gum arabic comes, and this is what gum arabic actually looks like. One of the most important products sent north were goat skins. They ended up in Morocco, where the skins were tanned, dyed, and turned into gloves and other leather products. Among other things known in Europe and the US, it was all called Morocco leather. Up in the inland delta of the Niger River, the great market city of Jenny was one departure point for caravans across the Sahara. Before heading north, a lot of the goods were shipped from Niger River ports on large cargo boats like this one. The goods were shipped northeastward, along the Niger River to the port near Timbuktu, or on to Gao, which after the decline of Mali was the capital of the Songhai Empire, founded by Askia Muhammad the Great. Like all trading systems, commerce across the Sahara involved goods moving in 2 directions, from the Mediterranean to the Sahel, and the Sahel back north. The gold was transported north by the same routes traveled to bring salt south of the Sahara. The salt was mined in the Sahara, and one time it was claimed to be worth its weight in gold. Early on, the salt came from Tagaza in the very far north of present-day Mali. Later, the source was Taodeni, 500 miles north of Timbuktu. And it still is. At the mine, salt cut into slabs and loaded on camels, as shown in the background. Foreground is the mine. In the background, you see camels loaded with the slabs of salt. And the salt caravans moved south to Arawan, which is about halfway to Timbuktu. And when they stop for the night, as they did here in Arawan, they unload for the night and reload before continuing the next day. From Taodeni to Timbuktu, it takes about 2 weeks. and from Arawan about a week to Timbuktu. Then from Timbuktu, it's distributed along the Niger River in cargo boats like this. To markets where it's cut into smaller pieces and distributed to towns throughout the Sahel like Gao and hundreds of other places. But in addition to all these material goods, one of the greatest West African exports that's rarely, if ever, mentioned is music and musical instruments. We think that the instruments of North Africa, as you see here with the Ganawa, who are their griots, we think those were influenced by the Ngonis that you see on the left from West Africa. In addition to all these material goods, it's now let's considering the question of what, let's conclude by considering the question of what the actual sources of the gold look like. The maps all show the approximate locations of places like Bambouk on the Senegal River, Bouré, which is in Guinea near the Niger River, and the Akan goldfield down in the old Gold Coast, now Ghana. This is the Ashanti Kingdom, so famous for its gold that the area became known as the Gold Coast during colonial times. Some of the gold was crafted into jewelry and ornaments. The kings of Ashanti were called Ashantahini. On this map, the gold fields are indicated by the light brown patches, but what did those places actually look like? How was the gold extracted? Early Arab geographers who wrote about the gold producing lands below the Sahara in what they called Ghana had some fantastic ideas about the production. One of them said, "In the country of Ghana, gold grows in the sand as carrots do and is plucked at sunrise." Another one said, "Traders in Ghana have found places where stalks of gold were growing at Alzaman." Mansa Musa even contributed to these myths, saying a gold plant that it's a gold plant that blossoms after rains, has leaves like grass and roots of gold. Mansa Musa probably never went near gold fields, evidently wasn't even sure where they were, was quite clueless about the source of his wealth, but we can get there by starting in one of my research villages and asking my griot informants, "Do you know where Konfara is?" And they did know where it was. And in 2005, I went there, and this is what an abandoned gold field looks like. This is not one of the ancient gold fields, because if it were, those holes would have been filled in long since. They wouldn't still be showing. But that's what an abandoned gold field looks like before it's covered up. What did it look like back in the time of the Mali Empire? Not too much different than this. As we've seen, some Arab writers had fantastic ideas about gold just lying around, waiting to be picked up and carried home. About the end of the 10th century, another author claimed that traders would slip stealthily into the kingdom of Ghana, where all the earth is gold. Ibn al-Hamdani, who died in 912, mentioned a traveler in Ghana who found places where stalks of gold were growing. He said, "Musa, the king of that country, has a truce with the gold plant people who pay him tribute." Asked about the gold plant, Mansa Musa said, "It is found in two forms. One is found in the spring and blossoms after the rains in open country. It has leaves like the Nigel grass, and its roots are gold. The other kind is found all year round at known sites on the banks of the Niger River and is dug up. In those days, they called the Niger the Nile. because they thought it was connected to the one in Egypt. There are holes there, and roots of gold are found like stones of gravel and gathered up, they'd say. Sultan Musa said gold was his prerogative, and he collected the crop as a tribute, except for what the people of that country took by theft. Mansa Musa said there are pagan nations in his kingdom from whom he does not collect the tribute, but whom he simply employs in extracting the gold from his deposits. The Arab writer was told the gold is extracted by digging pits about a man's height and depth, and the gold is found embedded in the sides of the pits, or sometimes collected at the bottom of them. The nuggets found in all the mines of his country are reserved for the king, only this gold dust being left for the people. The nuggets may weigh from an ounce to a pound. It is said that the king owns a nugget as large as a stone. After a long day with a hoe in hand and a baby on the back, the female miners take what they've got to the buyer's agent, where the day's take of precious grains are weighed. Now, in some places, the gold balancing weights themselves are works of art, like these from the Ashanti gold fields. The one here that I saw that day was more modest. The weight is on the left, and the gold dust from the day's work is on the right. When the gold is weighed, it's purchased with guinea francs. Perhaps they made the equivalent of our $5 for the day's work, maybe less. Of course, over the centuries, some of the gold was retained and turned into jewelry for wealthy West Africans, like the Fulani women of Mopti and Mali, who at one period I photographed 4 years in a row. This is all the same woman in 4 sequential years. And with that, we reach a different kind of gold in a sunset on the Niger River, and another sunset behind a camel caravan at Arawan in the Sahara Desert. And this is the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Conrad. Thank you so much, Barbara. I'll let Dr. Helen take over for the Q&A.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. We have a few questions that were coming in during the presentation, but I'll take them as they proceed. We had a question regarding, someone asked, as you have sea pirates, did you have desert pirates, since a good deal of the gold route was through the Sahara and the Sahel? So were there desert pirates?
The so-called desert pirates would be the Tuareg peoples, the nomads of the desert. And they made their living by taxing the caravans sometimes, but other times, if they were not, doing, if they were outlaws, sort of thing, those would be the ones who raided caravans and plundered them, and those would be the people who would be called pirates.
Thank you. We have a question regarding, was the gold extracted from the raw ore on site or shipped elsewhere to be processed?
No, it was all done on site, just like you saw. The one slide showed a little bit of gold dust in the pan, and then that was what they got by the end of the day. Now there were also nuggets, and they were probably sometimes embedded in surrounding rock and dirt, but they were cleaned up there. There was no process for refining the gold. It was raw gold, and that was the way it was exported.
Okay, very good. We have two more questions coming in. Around slave labor, to what extent was slave labor historically involved in the salt and gold extraction? And if so, how might this form of forced labor compare with other forms of slavery? Example of chattel slavery.
Well, in the context of those societies, it wouldn't be called forced slavery. It was a different kind of a system of servitude. Captives were regarded as valuable property, and they were treated as such. So when captives were taken in a slave raid, which is usually how it worked, they'd be taken back to the village, and they'd be introduced into the economic system. Some of the slaves, if they were taken as babies, as children, called children of the sack, they'd be introduced into the local society, and they'd just become part of the social system with sort of lower status. Able, mature people, able men, might be the ones who were Kamalen, mature young men with great abilities. They'd be introduced into the army, into the military. In fact, the one king that made his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1300 was called Sakura. We don't know his last name because he was originally a captive. And after a couple of generations following the founding of the Mali Empire, the Keita ruling lineage became quite weak. And in fact, one of them is thought to have been insane. He would entertain himself by shooting arrows at his own people. So there was a takeover by these powerful military leaders. And it wasn't exactly a coup d'etat. It was leadership that the country turned to when their leading dynasty began to fail them. So Sakura became a Mansa of Mali, though he had been a captive. And since he went on the pilgrimage, we know he must have been a very good ruler. We know from the Arab sources that he was highly respected and that he made progress in expanding the Mali Empire. Unfortunately, Sakura was killed. He died somehow, we don't know how, on the return journey from the pilgrimage. Other slaves, if they were female, they would be also incorporated into the society. They would all work on farms. Farming was the livelihood. And so both male and female slaves would work on the farms, but they would eventually be absorbed into the society, and their captive identities would be lost, and they'd take on local names, and the idea of them ever having been captives is lost in time.
Thank you for that. We have a question that we tell our students that ancient Ghanaians traded with the Wangarians, not sure if I pronounced that correctly, who are in control of the gold mines. They kept the gold dust, but had to give the nuggets to the king as a tax. Were Wangarians considered Ghanaian, or were they their own people? And that spelling is W-A-N-G-A-R.
Yeah, it's Wangara, yes.
Okay.
The Wangara were a long distance trading people who came out of Ouagadougou, and as the fortunes of Ouagadougou declined, the Wangara were continually traveling eastward for trade, and as time went by, they settled farther to the east, and they were virtually one and the same as the Soninke when they left Ouagadougou, but eventually they became also identified with the Jula. And Jula in the Bamana language means trader, but now, as we've learned, the Mande-speaking peoples of Cote d'Ivoire are one group there is called Jula, and their dialect is very similar to Bamana and Maninka. But the Wangara were was a collective term to describe long distance traders that originated as Soninke in Ouagadougou, or the so-called Ghana Empire, the land of gold.
Okay, we have a question regarding the silent barter method of trade. Could you expound on that a bit?
It's a myth. It probably never happened. It was a story that someone made up along the way. We don't know the origin of the story, but it wasn't the sort of thing that really happened.
We have a follow-up question. Do you have teaching resources or book extracts that speak to what you are explaining regarding the role of enslaved workers in the pre-test economy?
Well, the first article I ever published was slavery in Bama society, and what the paper explained was that so-called slavery in West African society was just not the kind of slavery we think of after the transatlantic slave. As I say, the captives were regarded as very valuable, very important additions to local society. Many of the women would be married into the society. The Empire of Ségou had a very large standing army, and it required a lot of crops, a lot of farming to maintain that army. So they took a lot of captives who worked in the fields. But as I say, many of the captives took on other roles, gained other kinds of status in society. In the Bamana Empire of Ségou, after the original Coulibaly dynasty, there was a period of time when there were 4 rulers in a row who were former captives. And they ruled during a time of turmoil. But at the end of their time, the Jara dynasty came into power in the 18th century, and that was the one that was still in power when the Muslims overran the Bamana Empire and established the Kingdom of Messina, and later they were replaced by the French.
Thank you. Another question around the Wangarans and the Ghanaians. Did Arab traders trade directly with the Wangarans, or did they just trade with the Ghanaians in the markets? We have sources that say the Arab traders never interacted with the Wangarans as a way to keep the locations of the gold mines a secret. Can you expound on that, please?
Well, I think the Wangara in that literature are getting more credit for control of the gold than they deserve. The question is, what's the question again?
Let's see here. They have.
Oh, okay, I've got it.
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, the term Arab is used too loosely. Most of those traders were North African Berbers. The so-called Sanhaja and Tuareg are people of the desert, but the Berbers of North Africa, the Atlas Mountains, and along the Mediterranean littoral were other Berber peoples. And a lot of times when people talk about the trade down into the southern regions of West Africa, they use the term Arab when they're really talking about Berber peoples. The Arabs came into North Africa after, in the 8th century, and they brought in what became the dominant religion. But the Berber people still maintained their dominance over trade and government and so forth. So The term Arab, they became, the Muslim invaders intermingled and became part of North African society and culture and history in the following centuries. But the better term to use for the people who carried on trade down across the Sahara is Berber. And the question of who controlled the gold, it was not the Wangara who controlled the gold. It was the local rulers who controlled the gold fields. And the Wangara were traders who moved the gold out into their destinations.
In reference to terminology, when you say Berber, is that also synonymous with Tuareg?
The Berber call themselves Amazigh, as you have in your program. Berber is a corruption of the European term barbarian because of there was a lot of piracy off the coast of North Africa for a long time, and the North Africans became known for that. They took a lot of Europeans as slaves, and a lot of Christian slaves were taken and became Muslim. The leader of the Moroccan invasion to Songhai was a Christian slave from Spain. The Tuareg. The Amazigh is the name that the Berber call themselves, and Tuareg is a term that is a general collective term for many consolidated, I can't think of that, the name, the word escapes me, but they were like large clans, large nomadic clans in the desert, and they had a clan leader, and they were, a confederation is the term I was trying to think of. These were Muslim confederations, and there's a known number of them. They all had their own individual names, and the chieftain was recognized as leader of that whole confederation. The term Sanhaja, farther over to the west, is just the sort of the equivalent of Tuareg. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the word Tuareg. A lot of people writing about them put an S on the end, call them Tuaregs, but that's a mistake because Tuareg is a plural. And a singular Tuareg person is a Targi, T-A-R-G-H-I.
Okay, this leads us nicely into the next question. In other Muslim nations, non-Muslims were taxed, but apparently Mansa Musa didn't tax pagans. Do you know why?
See, Mansa Musa didn't tax pagans?
Yeah, that's what.
Is
there evidence for that, or?
No, the way things were in the time of Mansa Musa and in the first centuries of the arrival of Islam in sub-Saharan West Africa, the main distinction was that the Muslims were traders, and they were welcomed into local society, like places like Kumbi in Ouagadougou, Ghana, and Walata and Timbuktu on the southern edge of the Sahara Desert. And they were accepted because it was profitable to have Muslims living in your society. And if they wanted to build a mosque, that was just fine. But early on, they lived in separate parts of the community. There's an impression that when Islam arrived, some people converted to Islam, and you had your Muslim community, and then you had your the people who practiced their traditional system of belief. What happened gradually was that the system of belief became syncretic. The local people who professed Islam were not strict Muslims. They were people who would go to mosque on Friday because it was good for their relations with the traders. But for centuries, and this is still true in rural villages that I work in, the people are a mixture of one person will go to the mosque on Friday, but he might have a como. He might be a como owner. I know people. I work with people like that, and so the religion for centuries was not a case of some people were Muslims and some people were not. It was a blend of the system of belief. They were covering themselves from all angles. All right, sorry, the question was on taxes. So what I'm getting at is that there wasn't the kind of distinction where Mansa Musa would tax pagans or not, because they weren't regarded that way. That distinction wasn't made. Mansa Musa became a pious Muslim, and many of his followers who went on the pilgrimage to Mecca were also nominally Muslims, but they were also still connected to the traditional spirit system. And there's one of the most important legends, oral traditions, is about an ordinary Bamana person or Maninka person who committed some sort of sin and was told he had to make the pilgrimage to Mecca. The character's name is Fajigi, or Makantaka Jigi, our father of hope, who went to Mecca. And this legendary character went off to Mecca to atone for this sin he had committed. And while he was in Mecca, he acquired all of the boli, all of the traditional sacrificial objects, and the various kinds of masks and sacrificial objects, and brought them back to Mecca. And that's how those things were acquired. And this was a way of integrating the traditional system of belief with Islam, of legitimizing the traditional system of belief and saying it actually came from Mecca.
Okay, thank you. We have a question regarding the story of Sankura Mansa and the system of captivity. It seems similar, the questioner asks, to some of the workings of the Mamluk Empire. Are there connections to be made here, or did the Mamluk system develop on its own? And apologies if I mispronounced that.
No, that's all right. No, they were not connected. This was something that happened in West Africa. It wasn't influenced by the Islamic culture, the Islamic world. It was part of what I described as a system where captives were integrated into society. And if he was an able young man and he was a great warrior, he could become a leader just like anybody else, a keletigi, a war leader. And we know we have quite a few examples of people like Sakura who became so respected and powerful that he actually became the Mansa, the ruler of Mali, that was so well liked and accomplished so much that it was possible to go on pilgrimage. If he was someone that was not liked, that they would like to get rid of, he wouldn't dare leave for 2 years to go on pilgrimage. And so we're solid evidence that Sakura, as a former captive, was one of the better rulers of the Mali Empire at that time.
Thank you for that. Let's see. Could, questioner writes, could be good connection to students that see that this happened often in history and across the world. There's a slight discussion going on in the chat area about the silent barter. Questioner writes, I think there's an antidote to that. Let's see here. Can you talk? Comments?
I think the story of silent barter, often in legends like that, that's a sort of a legendary event, and legends often have a kernel of truth very early on at the beginning. Now there may have been an occasion where a European, a foreigner, encountered native peoples that had something they wanted, whether it was gold or whatever, and they didn't have a mutual language. They couldn't understand each other, and so they went through this procedure that's said to have been the method of silent trade. But you know, and it's certainly it could very well have happened, but it was not an established institution. It was not an actual historic economic process that needs to be thought of that way. Traders, very early on, these people were linguists. And the Black Africans, the sub-Saharan Africans, it's not at all unusual for any sub-Saharan West African. This is true 6 centuries ago. They all spoke 3 or 4 languages, and when somebody else, and often more, and if Berbers speaking Tifinagh came down there, it wouldn't be very long at all before the local people would be able to communicate with them, and vice versa. One thing that gets forgotten is that these are non-literate people, and they have amazing memories and amazing abilities to absorb different languages. So this whole idea of the silent trade was something that just wasn't natural. It didn't need to happen.
Helen, you're muted. You're muted, Helen.
Sorry about that. Who were the Moors?
Moor is a term. One of the Berber states in pre-Islamic times in the north was called Mauritania, and the people of Mauritania came to be known as Moors. But it was just a term that foreigners used to describe the Berber people of that area. It gets a little bit complicated because at some point the Romans become involved in those Berber states of North Africa, and there were Berbers who were taken to Rome and educated, and then who went back to North Africa and became kings in their own right. But that's a whole other area that it's beyond, I think, the scope of this program. But Moor is just a general collective term, and it's applied different ways in different places. In Mauritania, a Moor is someone who is a mix of mixed Arab and Berber descent, and it's just a general term that's quite vague, not very specific at all.
Okay, thank you for that. Can you talk more about the cultural systems that are still in place in West Africa and that stem from the Mali Empire?
Well, we don't know for sure that the social system in West Africa. We'll use the Mande as our main example because they comprise Manding is the collective term for the language of the people of like Bamana, Maninka, Jula, Mandingo, and so forth. They're all Mande language speakers. And what was the question? Oh, and the social system today, we don't know for sure if that existed during the time of the Mali Empire. The social system today is one that is thought to be hierarchical, although in daily life it doesn't really work that way. Yeah, the so-called aristocratic or noble class are called horon, and they're the farmers. Farming is the noble industry. And there are aristocrats that are people from ruling lineages that their lineages are traced back to the Sunjata epic, the Keita, the Kamara, and in many others, Traore and so forth. A major part of modern day society in Mande is a group called Nyamakala. And Nyamakala is a collective term for all the bards and artisans. A blacksmith or Numu is a Nyamakala. A leather worker or Garanke is a Nyamakala. Female Numuso are potters. The woodworkers, Ule, are Nyamakala. They're also usually blacksmiths. There are the Jeli are the traditional bards, who are the musicians and storytellers and the repositories of the traditional history. They're the ones that relate the great epic traditions. There's another Nyamakala group that are people of speech called Fune or Fina, depending on Bamana and Manika. And the Fina are Jeli or bards who specialize in Islamic texts. And so their oral performances are from Islamic texts, the Surah from the Quran. But the famous bards and musicians are called Jeli, Jeli K, or Jeli Muso, Jeli men and women. We think then of course, if you look at it as a hierarchical structure, there was a slave level, captives, but I've already explained what their status was, and they were absorbed over generations. They were absorbed into the local society, and the society co-edited a book about the Nyamakala, and the main message of the book is that modern society is not that hierarchical at all. It's very egalitarian. You have people if you go down into the market in Bamako, Mali, you see names of the owners of the premises that are from every level of society. There's just really no distinction anymore. It's become a very egalitarian society. Some of the distinctions are ethnic, because the Fula, or the society of Fula people were now they speak Mande languages, many of them. But the Fula were the nomadic pastoralists who herded the great herds of cattle, but they were also long distance traders, and they were always intermingled with the other people. One of the other points that needs to be made when we talk about West African society today or early on is that it was all intermingled. There were no borders between peoples. There's no such thing as a state or a polity or a city that you would go into and they were all Jula people, or they were all Maninka, or there was this constant, it was always a very heterogeneous mix of people in any society. Even in villages, there'd be 2 or 3 different ethnic peoples in the village. In the Wassoulou region of southern Mali, the corner of Cote d'Ivoire and Guinea, the chiefs of the villages even today are Fula, but they speak Maninka, and the people in the village are Maninka, or they call themselves Malinke. So it's although I must say that back in the days of the Mali Empire, there would have been clearer distinctions, because we know from Ibn Battuta, who visited the court of Mansa Suleiman in the mid 14th century. He was an eyewitness to the social system, and we know that the Jeli, the griots, the bards were of quite high status, quite wealthy, but they were apart from the warriors and the farmers and the ruling elite.
You're unmuted. You're muted, Helen.
Sorry, I'll stay unmuted so I don't do this again. Can you give us some examples of how Islam and local religious traditions mixed or coexisted? I've seen Qurans used as amulets. Any other examples that could be incorporated in class discussions about the spread or diffusion of religion?
Yeah, that's been pretty much the focus of my research for the last 10 or 15 years. And let's see, it's pretty, I lay stress on the fact that people who profess being solid Muslims and who will, one of their greatest desires in life is to make the pilgrimage to Mecca one time in their life, and who never miss mosque on Fridays. There are a lot of people like that who are very strict, pious Muslims who follow the tenets of Islam very carefully, and they're very conscientious, and they would be able, you could compare them to any devout Muslim anywhere in the world. But the vast, think about Christianity in our own society. What's the percentage of people who go to church? In Mande society, you've got people who go to the mosque on Friday, but whose system of belief is still rooted in the village system of initiation societies, where you have all men, when they become mature, join the initiation society. That's when they're circumcised, and they are initiated into the secrets of the initiation society, and they're able to view the como when it comes out to be danced. Those people might still go to mosque. I've been working with Basi Tigi, with sorcerers, so-called, in northern Guinea, and in a little village, and there's a mosque on the hill. And the man that I work with, we go back into his sanctuary, and we discuss, and I research his work with the traditional system of belief. These people are they're healers, they're diviners, and they're the people who communicate with the spirit world. And I visited him for a period of maybe 10 to 15 years, going back most years, and I photographed, recorded his creation of what he calls a como, which is the most powerful occult object in Mande society. I didn't even know it was a como until he finally brought it out the last time I was there in 2017. But he goes to the mosque on Fridays. So it's what we can call a syncretic system of belief. I would dare to say that a majority of the population in that society, in that culture, don't see any conflict between their genies, their wokalo, the spiritual characters that inhabit the spirit world, they don't see any conflict between that and Islam. In fact, when Islam was first introduced into West Africa, West Africans saw elements of Islam that they recognized. When they saw the script in the Quran, they said, "Oh, we do that. That's like our sand divination. We make arcane symbols in the sand, and that's one of our systems of divination." When they saw the Muslims with their satala, or their water pot that they would rinse their wrists and necks and faces on when they do the ablutions before they'd pray, well, that pot had special spiritual status. It was a boli or a basi. It was obviously something that was easily recognizable because it was a spiritual object that was involved, a material object that was involved in communication with the spirit world. So, and the idea of pilgrimage, they recognized that immediately because there's an ancient tradition of Dalamasigi. And Dalamasigi was when a person who was expected to be a leader would be taken on a journey around the countryside to all the sacred sites and initiated into the secrets of those sites. It was a pilgrimage. So there were many aspects of Islam that didn't look at all foreign to local people, and they regarded it as something that was to be taken advantage of, because if these people who arrived here with this obviously well-established way of communicating with the spirit world, well, let's do that too. We're not going to give up our Como and our Kore and our other initiation societies, but let's take on this Allah also. It sounds like a good thing for us if it brings wealth and can help us be sure that our wives bear children, and that it will add potential to our lives where we can establish our well-being. If it adds to our security and our means of making a living, then why not? Let's get involved with that too and bring it into our system. And that was what happened.
Okay, it's pretty close to 10:50. We are going to take a break. We have 1 minute. I just want to read the question and then we'll just go ahead and take a break, just to let you know that this question did get asked around gum Arabic. Where is it produced? And goat skins raised in the Sahara, and where they brought across the desert. It's 10:49, so we'll have to be, and we plan to take a break at 10:50. So feel free if you can answer any part of that about gum Arabic and goat skins.
You want me to answer it now?
Yeah, whatever you can do within a minute.
Oh, well, gum Arabic comes from the acacia tree, and it's like sap. It's think about it's like sap of the acacia tree, and it's processed into that what I showed in the picture. What was the other part of that question?
Goat skins.
Goat skins were huge flocks of goats, and they would be sometimes they would be even they would be prepared for export, and huge camel loads of goat skins would go north across the Sahara to Morocco, where they were turned into leather goods. And that's why people in the United States, Europe, and everywhere would say their gloves were made of Morocco leather, because that was where the products were, where the goat skins were turned into products, but they didn't really come from Morocco. They came from sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay, thank you. It's 10:50, and I think we're going to break, and I'll pass it on to Vanessa. Apologies for the muting there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bond. Thank you, Dr. Conrad, for your presentation. It was so informative, the images and the intricate maps. And thank you for engaging in this extended Q&A. And thank you, participants, for all your wonderful questions. You can stick around. We will be here for, we'll take a break for 10 minutes until 11. And then we'll move on to our next presenter. Thank you so much again, Dr. Conrad. And thank you, Barbara, for helping as well.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Workshops. And so we're really grateful for Lucina. Lucina Martin is a native of Detroit. She graduated from Howard University in 2003 with a BA in African Studies. For 10 years, she taught outreach throughout the Washington, D.C. area with traditional expressions, a program designed to teach African folkloric studies, dance, music, and song as youth arts enrichment. She entered the classroom full-time teaching social studies in 2014 and is now a teaching artist. Over the years, Lucina has traveled to West Africa on several occasions to study traditional folklore. She has recently joined Mwalimu teaching community and endeavors to continue the mission of working with educators to increase awareness of African cultural heritage. Welcome, Lucina.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I am beyond elated to be participating in yet another opportunity to share about one of my favorite places in the whole wide continent of Africa. So let's jump into it. So today my presentation is titled Elements of Praise Poetry, but as you will see, there are many things that that go into that, and also that expand beyond that sentiment or that idea. And we've just got a lot that we want to get into. So I will get started with something that hopefully will be a bit familiar to the majority of you in the room.
And Lucina, is your video showing?
It was. Where did it go?
Okay, I don't see you right now, but if everybody else sees you, then that's great.
I see her, Vanessa.
Okay, great.
See her, but I see the presentation.
Okay, great.
All right, so here we go. Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air. Boom, 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 Hey, in West Philadelphia, born and raised, on the playground is where I spent most of my days. Chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool and all, shooting some b-ball outside of the school when a couple of guys who were up to no good started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in one little fight and my mom got scared and said, "You're moving with your auntie and uncle in Bel Air." All right, I'm gonna stop there. I hope, like I said, that is something that is familiar to you. Why? Because it is something that is popular, something that is well known. And for those of you who are not familiar, that is the opening theme song to Will Smith's Fresh Prince of Bel Air, the TV show that he used to have on back in the 90s. But that theme song popped up to me in connection with this presentation because it speaks directly to our method and our means of transmitting, of maintaining, of keeping the memory of our culture and the memory of our stories. And here we have a very popular, well-known proverb. Until lions have their own historians, tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Now this one is really accessible, fairly well known, and it is one that is a great opportunity to give a moment for thinking for students. It's actually one of the things that I use in the introductory lessons of my history course when I was in the classroom, because we want to help our students to understand the keys to history are related to power and are related to perspective. And it's usually the people in power who get to share their perspective. It's the people in power who get to decide or who control what stories are going to be told and what stories are going to be perpetuated. So it's really important that we as individuals recognize that we too have stories, that we too have the power to determine how our stories are told, how our stories will be told. And that every choice that we make is a choice that makes history. So today, my effort and the things that I'll be sharing with you all is in hopes of bringing out ways and developing ways that we can help our students to connect with a lot of this amazingly rich material that we have been talking about thus far and will continue to talk about tomorrow through the Institute. So we really want to be able to take this rich information and share it with our students and help them to recognize the connections between what they're learning about Africa and what we already have as individuals in our own cultural communities and in our own lived experiences, all right? And recognize that it's common across humanity, across the human experience, to share and exchange stories in the way that the people of Africa do, and in the way that the people of all of our respective cultures do. So hip hop, which is the example that I used to begin, represents the polyrhythmic and melodic spoken word oration of the Jali tradition. And we've been mentioning the word Jali throughout the course of the Institute, and you will continue to hear it as we speak of Manding peoples of West Africa. Jali is just a key part of that, particularly with regard to the exchange of history. But I will go into more detail about the role of the Jali in this particular presentation. So we look at the way that they transmit the information. We look at the fact that inside of the music, there's a certain cadence, there's a certain type of rhythmic flow and nature to how hip hop artists speak. Sometimes there's melody inside of what they say. Sometimes it's a spoken word piece. And in the same way, the Jali, as they present, their music flows and their words flow in a very similar way in how they work. And it's all connected to a lot of the other expressive forms, musical forms that have come up through the African American experience, like spirituals, gospel, blues, jazz, R&B. I mean, it's really all the DNA of a universal, like I said, a universal tradition of using music to transmit the stories of the human experience. We all have these ways, but there's something distinctly African in the style of delivery in those different forms. Now, there's lots of resources on those various music forms and their connections to Africa. I won't dig into those details because it will send us off on a tangent, and it's really it's a broad subject to try to cover. So I'll just mention there a few of the musical forms that we do have. All right, and so I have here a couple of examples that should hopefully drive this point home even more for you. On the left, I'll give you an example of what many of you should already recognize as a woman singing in a church, right? The way that she, just pay attention to the way that she operates with call and response. This is a gospel song. She's operating with call and response. She's operating with the connection and the participation of the people. She's not standing in front of the crowd with just an audience watching her, right? She's participating and among the people. And also the aspect of improvisation. So there's a standardized piece to the song. It has a chorus or a refrain, and she is using improvisation. So let's just look very quickly at that, maybe a minute or two. right. Now, if I let that go too long, we'll just be in it for the whole duration. I can't. I almost couldn't turn her off. But so that's a very moving example of how gospel music is frequently expressed and experienced. And clearly you can see by the casket there that she happens to be at a funeral. That is a highly spirited funerary experience, I will tell you. But continuing on to another example, you'll see on the other side of the slide, we have a band, and yes, that is me with hair, in a band that I sing in called Sahel. And we actually perform music from all over the African diaspora, but specifically with regard to Africa, along the West Coast Sahel belt or Sahel region, which we talked about the other day and yesterday in one of our maps. But so this example is actually at a festival. It was the Senegal Day Festival in Silver Spring. And we were singing Youssou N'Dour's Father Bamba. And there were a couple of recording artists from Senegal who were so moved by, by our rendition of the song, as many Senegalese are when they hear pretty much anything by Youssou N'Dour, but particularly about Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, understanding his history as a major figure in Islam, Islam in general, and particularly with regard to Islam in West Africa and in Senegal. But so he's a very important figure, and you can see by the way that the participation goes and the way that the crowd is moved and the way that the people are moved, how touched they are by the experience. So I'm going to share this now. Forgive me if this goes a little bit left because I was unable to get the video to actually join into the presentation. So it's going to send us to a Facebook window. So bear with me, and hopefully we'll be able to keep everything together in the presentation and bring it back. See if we can get some sound. There we
He's the one. He's the best in the fun. I trust Ahmadou Bamba. You're the one that I need. You're the one that I believe in. Hadim Mustafa Mbake. Balagmara. Mamjara Pusubi Burhan. Senyu Jego Ibrahim Namal Chadaro. Sikuba Ladelo. Mbake Balai Saburila.
Okay, so any Wolof speakers out there, forgive me if I broke him up mid-sentence, but if I don't stop, again, we'll be watching the whole thing. But yes, that video is accessible on Sahel's Facebook page. So no worries, you can actually see that anytime. Just gonna go ahead and now push forward a little bit. So, but again, identifying those common threads. So we also saw example of improvisation. We also saw refrain. If you could have a mic in the crowd, you would have heard the people actually singing along. The same thing that we were singing up on the microphones, the people were responding along with him while he was singing, while he was improvising over. Mind you, we did not practice that. We did not rehearse that. We did not invite him onto the stage. He was so moved that he decided to come, ask permission, of course, greet, of course, but he joined us in that performance, and he moved through improvisation and connected with the band, connected with the crowd, and that is sort of a natural flow of the way that things go, okay? So with that, we want to now move into a consideration of what it is to tell story through music, to tell and share culture through music, particularly through song. And what I invite you to do at this point is to actually think about it. I want you to take the next 60 seconds to think of a song that tells a story, a song that you know. It could be any genre, country, R&B, anything that is familiar to you yourself, because again, we want to make these connections. And if we use this with our students, or when we use this with our students, we want to invite them to make connections for themselves. So I'm about to start the clock, and I would love if you would type in the chat to share what songs you want to connect with. And if you'd like to share out loud and maybe sing a line or two, you're welcome to do that too. Just go ahead and put that in the chat too, that you would like to share out by joining us, and then we can call on you and you can unmute. So I'm going to start our timer at 1 minute, and I'm going to go and look into the chat and see what we get. And that's a silent timer too, so just go ahead and think, type it in. What have we got? Let's see. Of course, my 1 minute timer isn't starting, but we're still working with 1 minute, folks. Oh, there we go. Oh, yes, we got them coming in. We've got Tracy Chapman, Fast Car, Make My Blue Eyes Blue. All right, I got a name by Jim Croce. I'm sorry if I didn't say that right. Rocky Raccoon, Hollywood by Chaka Khan. Slick Rick, Children's Story. Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday. Home on the Range, absolutely. I Shot the Sheriff. J. Cole, Lights Please. 7 years old. Okay. Next Lifetime, Erykah Badu. Yes, absolutely. And do we have any volunteers to sing a line from the songs that you are sharing? It looks like my connection is a little bit slow, so forgive me, and I hope that you can hear me.
We can, but it does sound a little distorted.
I'm seeing glitches on my screen. It looks like I'm having a little bit of a connection thing. I'm gonna try to keep talking and see if it smooths back out. Oh, it looks like my internet is okay. Testify by comment. Okay, so I know that the slide has a 1-minute timer on it, but I am going to write, yeah, any song by Sam Cooke, absolutely. Uh-huh. Let's see. Yeah, I can't even get my controls to close screens. I was actually in the process of doing that. Copacabana. Looks like I got kicked out.
You're still there.
Okay. Looks like I've maybe gotten a
Someone says try advancing the slide.
re-up or boost.
Somebody says try advancing to the next slide. Maybe that's causing the delay.
Let's see. All right, so yeah, I think that maybe if I try going to the next slide, we might be able to get something. Yeah, I think it could be the video on the slide. Oh, it's still trying to load. I don't know. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I want to go to the next slide, but I can't even get the controls of the computer right now.
I'm not sure if you need all those tabs in your web browser, but you might want to try closing some of those out as well.
Yeah, I'm going to, oh, wait a minute. My screen just went completely blank. Like I said, guys, I'm so sorry, but I'm actually unable to even, it looks like my screen is completely frozen.
I can pull up your PowerPoint and maybe you can close everything on
Stop
yours.
sharing for the moment. Yeah, let's try that. I'm gonna stop share. See if we can get that to work.
And Lucina, you might want to also try leaving the Zoom and coming back in as well.
Okay.
Because I do think maybe you just have too much media uploading.
Yeah.
Say something, Lucina, maybe it's actually better now.
Yeah. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me. I cannot see anyone. I can hear you, but I can't see anyone.
All right, we can hear you, and I did put up your presentation.
So I'm just gonna let my computer breathe a little bit. Going. All right. Oh, it should just. Yeah.
Sorry?
The next screen on the presentation is
Jalila.
Yeah, I think
yes. So
I think I can only see her the old shared screen, and somebody
really?
Yeah, somebody else said they can only see that too.
Oh, you're not seeing. Okay, you're not. So nobody's seeing what I'm sharing.
Wait, there. Let me see. Is she hers is frozen?
Stop share.
Stop.
My computer is.
Okay, there we go. Okay, we can see your screen now, Vanessa.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Lucina, are you there? Jamie, is she there or did she leave the Zoom?
No, she's still listed on the as a participant, but I really think she may need to leave out of the Zoom and come back in.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if mine is stable enough to play that video as we wait.
So Judy would walk away, they don't done some more. Would you listen to me calling on your phone? Mama sang that get the bumper down. You hear me, Father Bumper.
Just for your information, on the left, you see Lucina right there on the left. That is Lucina. She sings with this group.
Now a story of your people can be shouted out loud. Your faith, your soul, and your journey. Until we see God in the man, your prayers, our prayers, oh no, it will not be ignored. Here we follow Bumper. You follow Bumper. You follow Bumper. You follow Bumper. Changes every time I leave your side. My soul plays in you, makes me survive. In this crazy world, now I can go anywhere. 'Cause I know you'll be there. We know your face will always make us stronger. Remember.
Hello, hello.
All right.
I'm back.
Welcome back, Lucina.
Hey, everybody. Oh, y'all saw me in my other form. Y'all got the dance floor section.
Yes, we did.
All right. So while I try to get my computer under control, I'm in on my phone right now. And I don't know if you all can see my video because you know how Zoom works on a phone. But it looks like I'm up and good to go. So thank you all for participating in that a little bit longer than the 1 minute that was intended. And my apologies. But so we move forward to Jalia. Yes, Vanessa, if you can go to the next slide. So Jalia is basically the artistic practice, the work of the Jali. And you can see it spelled many different ways. Jelly with a J, jelly with a DJ. When you use the D, that's usually in French pronunciation or spellings, I should say, because the pronunciation is the same. The DJ is the same. I've actually heard people who look at a DJ and say DJ. It's not necessary. It's the same pronunciation. Or with a DI. And again, that DI can go with an A after it or an E after it. And really the pronunciation is a matter of accent. So depending on what area or region you're in, you'll hear jelly or jolly, but they are the same, okay? They use these musical traditions to tell stories about their families and about the families of the communities that they're in. So the Jali, they're present at every important occasion, and that's including weddings, naming ceremonies, religious festivals, general, parties of all sorts throughout the year. And their roles include teaching, advising, and diplomacy as well, particularly the Jali at higher levels. There's a hierarchy of Jali, if you will, but we won't necessarily get into the details of that. Just suffice it to say that there are Jali families like the Kuyate and the Jabate that are more associated with the royal or the noble level. And then other Jali families have different kind of, niche, if you will, within the community. And the image that we have here is Sheikh Amala Jabate, and he's holding a traditional Jali instrument that's called ngoni. It's similar in sound to maybe a banjo. People might call it a lute, but I tend to hesitate to liken it to Western instruments aside from the purpose of getting an idea or a sense of how it might sound. So, because ngoni is ngoni, but if you again listen to it, and there's lots of research and evidence that the ngoni is very much connected to the development or the creation of the banjo that we have on this side of the water. Vanessa, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. And so in the Jali tradition, a Jali repertoire is going to include several ancient songs. They're generally composed of a scripted refrain called a donkili, along with an improvised section. And like you saw in our examples of the gospel song and the song by Yusundur, that scripted refrain is connected and attached to a song that allows for improvisation on top. The oral tradition, mediated by Jalis reciting or singing histories and stories from memory. So this is not written. The stories that the Jali tell are not written. It's in their DNA, as it were, or you might even consider it breeding, that these people are taught the skill and the art of memorization. They learn and memorize all of the information that they are to impart to the people. And it's their collective job and collective responsibility to keep it and to transmit it. So part of the skill that they have, they have musical acumen, they have musical skill, but in addition, they have that sense of memory. It's the symbol for Kuyate, for example, is the elephant, right? The totem for the Kuyate family is the elephant. And we all, in the English sayings, we say, the elephant never forgets, right? The elephant never forgets. So we have that in common. The praise of ancient kings and heroes. We know Sunjata Keita's story to be a prime example of an epic or a long poem that tells the story of the founding of Mali. The praise songs for family that lived long ago and people who are living in present day. They also use proverbs. It's another major component of traditional songs, but if you know any Jali, you will know that they often speak and interact and teach in proverbs and through proverbs, which are wise words of the people. And pictured here, we have Jimo Kuyate. He is performing on a traditional Jali instrument called kora. Okay, kora is a 21 plus, sometimes more than 21 strings instrument that, like I said, in terms of sound, might be likened to a lute or a harp. Both Jimo Kuyate and Shakamala Jabate have been local to Washington, D.C. Shakamala is from Mali, and he is currently living in this area, but Jali Jimo Kuyate passed away some years ago, but he was very well known and very instrumental in the development of cultural transmission through his group, his organization, Memory of African Culture, here in Washington, D.C. And he was a member of the National Ballet of Senegal before he came here to DC. Vanessa, you can go to the next slide. And so we have, in addition to the kora and ngoni, we have the bala or balaphone. And we have just a short clip so that you can get a sense of how it sounds. Thank you. All right, thank you, Vanessa. All right, and so continuing with Jali instruments, you have ntama, and if you are familiar with or had the opportunity, as over 1 billion people did, to see Black Panther, the film, the Disney film Black Panther, it carries a lot of ntama playing. Anytime that you hear his theme, the drum that actually changes its tone, that's the ntama. And so that is another one of the instruments that accompanies the Jali orchestra. The Dunu, or the Jali Dunu, as you can see here, is a large drum that's hung from one shoulder and played with a curved stick and accompanied by a bell that's played with the opposite hand. I don't know if, I don't know if you can see the bell that's actually in his hand, but the hand that he's holding in the air, he's actually holding a bell, and it has metal pieces on his fingers. Metal, basically rings, very thick metal rings are on his fingers. And as his fingers strike the bell, they clang and make the bell sound in rhythm, of course, with the drum. And then the guitar. So actually quite recently, the guitar has been added to the repertoire of Jali or griot because it's another string instrument, and it really lends itself easily and mixes well with the other instruments. And I see a question that came up in the chat about the connection between jali or griot. So griot is actually from the French, and the literal translation of griot is storyteller. And a lot of I would say practitioners in the cultural arts, performers and students of the cultural performing arts hesitate to use the term griot and prefer or show preference to jali, because jali encompasses the whole or the entirety of the jali's role. So griot kind of minimizes the role of the jali as just a storyteller, and they are so much more. As you saw in the previous slide with regard to their work and their role in the community, they are teachers, they are diplomats, they are historians. They maintain the whole history of the people. And so there's far more to that than just being a storyteller. So if you speak to a jali and you say griot, a lot of times you'll even hear jali use the term griot because it's more common and more popular or better known. But that's the distinction. And yeah, we've even seen bard. So bard comes from the English. Bard would be English, griot would be French, but the Mande term would be jali or jali. And like I said, the traditional term encompasses more of the traditional role. So we opt for that. And then I saw also a question, and since it's regarding this slide, I'll go ahead and answer it. Dunumba, is it connected or is it the same as Dunu? Dunu is that two-sided or two-headed drum. If you see the circle on one side, it's a cylinder. And the other side of the drum also has an animal skin on the head of it. The jali Dunu is held and played the way that you see the man standing and holding that. So in Mali, that is what you generally will see, but you may also see the Dunu orchestra. And I see that Mama Monica is the one who asked the question. She's very familiar with the djembe and Dunu orchestra, which is composed of additional or other drums. Dunum ba means big. Ba is the big or bass drum inside of the djembe and Dunu orchestra that's found in many places throughout Manding, but is not specific to jali, and it's not specific to jali music, the way that you find the jali Dunu inside of Mali. And I hope that that gives enough clarity for you all on that. And if you have more questions on that, of course, feel free to chime in, but we're gonna go ahead and move forward because it's a little bit of time. All right, so the praise songs or poems. So now we're moving forward into the elements of a praise song or a poem. So there is poetic form. And the thing about my phone is these chat questions jump right in while I'm in the midst of talking, and I won't ask you to stop asking the questions because they are key right in the moment of the question. Bala Faseke, and we are looking right here at the Sunjata epic, which makes it key and makes it a key connection. Bala Faseke Kuyate was, yes, you would term him Jali. He was the Jali of Sunjata Keita. He participated in raising that young man. He was his teacher. He was his advisor. In the same way that Bala Faseke's father was the Jali of Sunjata Keita's father, Magan Konfata, okay? So in the tradition, and particularly with regard to Kuyate and Keita, that relationship goes generation. The father or the chief or the king will have a Jali who is his, like I said, his teacher, his advisor. When the king is in court and is surrounded by people and is carrying on a session of court, the Jali is the one who will speak. The king's voice is not to be raised for the sake of being heard by the people. The king's voice is not to be raised up. And so it's the Jali who speaks on the king's behalf. So if you are speaking and you have an audience with the king, you'll speak to the Jali. You don't speak directly to the king, you'll speak to the Jali. And he will, he will converse with the king, and whatever the king's decision is, or whatever the king would like to say, it is the Jali who then speaks on his behalf. So that is again another part of the Jali's role inside of the community. Balafaseke's father was Sunjata Keita's father's Jali, as Balafaseke was Sunjata Keita's Jali. I hope that clarifies for you. So we're looking at, when we're singing songs of praise, we are looking at poetic form, and this is connected to the epic, but you'll see a little bit later where we give a little bit of a distinction. So here we're looking on that broader epic scale, that big major historical story scale. There's going to be a poetic form. So we're going to be in verse, speaking part by part or piece by piece. There's going to be genealogy. So you will start off by learning the family line, the bloodline of the people. You will, or of the, I should say, of the person who is being praised or who's being spoken of. And there are praised names. So usually big people or people who have done big things will have different names. It might be a name where, for example, Sunjata, even the name Sunjata is an amalgamation or connecting of his mother's name, Sogolon, and the term Jata, which means lion. So Sogolon over time got shortened, Sogon, Sunjata, right? So over time, that is how he got that name, but he's known by many names. Simbo or Simba, if you're familiar with Disney's The Lion King, it has many direct correlations to this particular story as well, right? But there are many different names that he's known by, and such is the case with any major figure who will have a praise song or a praise poem to keep their history. There are proverbs inside of it. Again, the teachings of a people are frequently passed down through proverbs or phrases that give words of wisdom, and then the lessons that are, that should come out of that experience. And then you have the reframe, which is going to be often a chorus, something that you always go back to, that is repeated, that is said over and over. Now, these elements may be repeated throughout the song or again throughout the poem. And what I would say to that, a thought just jumped in my head, but let's go ahead and push forward. I think yes, that's what I was going to say. In an epic, if you can run it back real quick, I'm sorry. In an epic, the repetition or the return to the refrain is going to be connected to the verses, but also in an epic, there are episodes. It's actually, like I said, it's told piece by piece, and one may perform one episode at a time, or one section or one segment at a time. The Sunjata Fasa, which is the story, if you can go forward, thank you. The story of Sunjata Keita is actually told in pieces. The Jali do come together once a year. There's a festival that they do where the entire epic is told all at once. But generally speaking, if it's going to be performed, it'll be just a piece or a section of it, because it's just too much to share all at once. So what I have here is an example, Sunjata Fasa. The Manding people are found throughout West Africa today. And when I say Manding, that means, of course, Mande, that means all of the groups that Brother Siddiqui mentioned earlier in terms of those language groups. They are all over West Africa. And their origin lies in an epic tale that's passed down through the generations of the descendants from the Mali Empire. And it's known as Sunjata Fasa. It's a song performed by Jali that tells the story of the founding of the empire in the 13th century. Now, what I'd like to share with you all is just a small part of that. And it goes a little something like this. Okay, here we go. Kuyalala, barakalata, sogolumba, barakalata, kuyalala. Nyama, 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 neme idona, nyama lekoro, nyama tedona pempe koro, neme idona, sunjata lekoro, sunjata tedona pempe koro. All right, so the little small section that I just shared, and if you're clapping, thank you, I can't tell. But the small section that I shared, I have the translation here on the slide, and it is the son of Narimaga. So again, we're naming his father. We're going through some of the genealogy, who comes from Mande. So we're talking about where he's from. We're giving it a space, and is the snake that encircles his village, has taken his bow to go for a walk. Those of us who know the story of Sunjata Keita are familiar with the fact that he was crippled for some years of his early life. And it was to the point where people made fun of him, they joked about him. The stories vary in terms of like at what point he began to walk, but there's general consistency in that he called for an iron rod to be cast for him so that he could use it to actually prop himself up, to pull himself up by this iron rod. One day he decided that he would just get up and walk. And so just in this one line, we're sharing a key aspect of his story, right? He's taken his bow to go for a walk. The son of Sogolon has taken his bow to go for a walk. All right, so, and then the second section, which is the frame. Nyama, 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 bembe yidona, nyama lekoro, so and so, right? That part is the refrain. So you'll actually hear that part return over and over inside of the epic. And it says people can hide from Sunjata, but Sunjata will never hide. And so, of course, that speaks to his strength. And that also speaks to the idea that people who may think they've got it going on, when they see him coming, they may go the other way, or it would behoove them to go the other way. That's actually me in the picture. That is actually me in that picture. So that is that. And so the YouTube link, and forgive me for not mentioning, the YouTube link there was actually just a link that goes to a recording of Mamadi Keita's Sunjata Fasa. And I'll take a moment. I know that we are short on time, but I will take a moment to mention that Mamadi Keita is of the 149th generation, direct descendant from Sunjata Keita. Oh, please don't play the link. No, it's not necessary. Thank you, though. He's the 149th generation of the Kuyate family. Of the Keita family. And traditionally, Keita are not artists. If you're familiar also with Salif Keita out of Mali, traditionally, Keita are not artists. But, occasionally one is so inclined, and we are the better for it as a planet, because those artists by the name of Keita, who I know have been instrumental in sharing and spreading the word of their people and the culture of their people. So yes, we can move forward to the next one. So far we have discussed praise songs as part of epic storytelling, which is episodic and a large scale. Praise songs are also created on the spot. Improvisation is one of the most impressive skills of the Jali. And that, of course, takes us back to the examples that I shared before that also give note to the improvisational skills that have been clearly passed down to people of African descent, both on the continent and from the continent, as well as those of African descent here in America, born here in America. So we have the impromptu. praise. So if, for example, and this is just an example of how this might come about, if a notable member of society is maybe arriving for a visit or maybe returning from a trip and being greeted by the community, a Jali might begin to speak, might speak up about who this person is, and that may happen in the form of song. Okay, and when they do that, you will hear them immediately start to speak about or sing about the person's bloodline or their clan, where they come from, who I should say they come from, and that is their genealogy. Notable past ancestors, so specific individuals out of that bloodline, out of that clan, who have made particular contributions to the people. And then coming forward in time to notable elders or recent ancestors. So now we're talking about people who may be direct members or direct family members of this great person who's standing in front of them, and their contributions to the local community. Now we're talking about perhaps this person's father, mother, grandparents, something like that, and the things that they have done. They've always been great. They've always helped those in need. They are responsible for this, that, or the other contribution, right? And then the good work that this particular person has done. So we're not just going to talk about, oh, it's so great to see you person, because each individual is preceded by their ancestry. Each individual is preceded by their family, by their family name. So as we even go out into the world, we represent our family. We represent our ancestors. We represent those who came before us and upon whose shoulders we stand, right? Those whose legacies we are a part of. So then, of course, there's a benediction. After we've finally gotten around to the individual in front of us, there is a benediction. And so that is, of course, prayers and hopes for good health, that the family will be well, protection from any type of misfortune that might come, perhaps even giving thanks that this person has traveled well and has arrived safely, things of that nature. So these songs, perhaps the older, the bloodline piece of the song, or well, most likely the bloodline piece of the song is going to be something that is known or that is common to the people. But as you get more and more direct or close to the individual level, we're talking more about improvisation. We're now getting to the point where this Jali or this singer is this song, I should say, is going into an improvised level of work, which tends to be amazingly beautiful. It's amazing what these awesome artists can come up with off the top of their head. Can we go to the next? Yeah, and that is the end of our talk, our talk as it may be, as it were, about the Jali tradition and about praise songs and praise poetry. Do we have time to do a quick 5-minute break?
Yes, we do.
Oh, fantastic.
And
so we
your computer back on?
My computer is back on, but since I wanted to continue the discussion and the presentation without falling behind, I didn't try to get back in, but I'm going to try now during our little 5 minutes and see if I can get on.
Okay.
Typed in a couple of the answers because I wanted to allow people to have their break, but as people return from the break, I do want to kind of continue looking at some of those. And also, Vanessa, it's going to look like, it looks like I'm going to continue needing your support here.
Not a problem. Could you check and see if you are covering the mic? Sometimes you're really clear and sometimes you're not.
Oh, okay, so I'll make sure that I keep my hand away from where the mic is on the phone. Thanks for that. Okay. So let's see. So far, yes, there are women Jali. They are known as Jali Muso, and I think that I'm trying to remember. I believe it was was it Dr. Conrad who mentioned the male versus female? It was either Dr. Conrad or Brother Siddiqui, forgive me if I'm mixed up. But Jeli Muso are the women, Muso means woman, and Jeli K are the men, K means man. Let's see. Or if you hear someone say Jali Ba, it means big Jali. So sometimes you might have a Jali who maybe they'll put it as their, like before their first name, Jali Ba so and so, or they would just have the title Jali so and so, and then maybe come behind that. Let's see. Okay, I think that we got, because the other questions I think came in while I was talking, and I think we addressed them as we went along. Okay. Oh. I see a question about policy making.
Lucina?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry, I was reading the question about policy making and about diplomacy. I would not be the one to answer that question. I would defer perhaps Dr. Conrad on that. And hopefully, I don't know if he's still with us, but it looks like we are a little bit beyond our 2 minutes. Are we, what do you all need from me?
I will put up the presentation for your PowerPoint from you if you need.
Yes, please do, because it just continues from there into the section where we're making our connections.
Okay. All right, do you see this first slide?
Yep. All right. Oh, my computer came back. Hallelujah. Because I really need it. I really need it. And I hope that it breathes life into itself. But I'm going to continue here. So now we want to move forward and make some connections to the goal road. Let's go to the next slide. And we are looking here at just an example of something that we can do to engage our students in opening up the mind of brainstorming ideas to conceptualize qualities that make a person or an object special. So I know that we had an opportunity yesterday to interact with the Gold Road map. And so this part of the afternoon is geared towards how we can actually connect the Gold Road map into this idea of the praise poem or the praise song. All right, so here we have an example, like I said, that can help our students to conceptualize or brainstorm about qualities that make a person or an object special or memorable. You would begin with a word web to identify memorable qualities, and then you would extend that to maybe writing down those qualities and even short anecdotes. So the word web would be something that the teacher or the presenter can do on the whiteboard or on the chalkboard, whatever have you, and guide the children, maybe model a couple of ideas to get them started. But you can have at the center something that you'll always remember, and the kids can, start to shout out what makes a person remember a person or even an item or an object. So what we have here, maybe if it's an object, it's something that has a special use. You always know, you always remember things that
do something special or different or unique, right? Something with unique craftsmanship, or particularly beautiful craftsmanship. You'll never forget that image. You may always remember something that is a part of nature, like the largest mountain or the longest river. There's something unique or special about that thing, right? With regard to people, you remember the people in your life who are particularly generous, who are particularly brave, or who are particularly trustworthy. Those are just certain qualities that may come up. Then they might write those qualities, and even, like I said, short anecdotes. If you want this to really extend into sort of a writing exercise, it's always good. I spent a little bit of time in ELA with the experience of having students really write a lot. And so 2 or 3 sentences that would actually expand the quality. So maybe an example of something that brings it in. Absolutely. And so then you would have the students drop the papers into a basket. So you could have them come up, walk up as they finish, and drop them into a basket or a crate. I know I can remember using a milk crate for this exercise, labeled Always Remember, or any other title that you wanted to give it. And you would read them aloud to the class. So you would just pick up one of the pieces of paper and you would read out one of the qualities. It doesn't necessarily have to have the children's names on them. It's just something that we can all do as a whole group activity to, like I said, get those brains going, get that brainstorming happening. So we have something that's the visual on the board, and we also have something that's hands-on. We also have a writing exercise inside of that. So hopefully that touches on a number of access points for us. Okay, let's go forward. All right. So, since my computer appears to still be fritzed out, I will not be able to do what I wanted to do with this particular slide. My goal was to actually set up a word web and write out as if we were on a whiteboard. But what I will invite you to do is brainstorm for a minute or two with regard to those qualities that we kind of started out a list, because I want you to consider your experience with the Gold Road map and consider what you will have done yesterday in terms of following up and continuing your exploration of that. So having chosen one particular item or one particular person, a particular piece of architecture or area, a place, things like that, something that stood out for you in particular on the Gold Road, and you don't have to stick to it, but what is it about that thing that made it memorable for you, that made it stand out? If you can take a moment and type something in the chat as an interactive opportunity for us here, that would be greatly appreciated. We're going to give it a minute or two. And as we see things come up in the chat, I'll just kind of provide a little commentary like we did with the songs in terms of what I see. So you can begin now, just typing it in, something that you saw. And if you want to pull up a tab while you sit where you are and pull back up the Gold Road map, if you didn't write anything down. But hopefully something can stand out in your actual memory that you wouldn't have to look back at the map to find. Vanessa, if you can play that 2-minute timer for us. Somebody said home cooking, absolutely. Salt for preservation. Yes, plentiful resources. The salt trade. Okay, the salt trade stood out, and the salt with regard to preservation. Salt is something that we use in food here. Musical storytelling across the Gold Road, and some of the architecture. What stood out about the architecture for you, if you can give us a little follow-up on that? Objects that are both decorative and functional. So anytime you see something that catches your eye, but also
has a function inside of the community. The mosques, okay, the design of the mosques, in many cases, the beauty of the mosques. The cowrie shells, how cowrie shells are used for trade. What actually stood out for me on the point of cowrie shells is this idea that even though gold was such a great and hot commodity to Europeans and to others, the gold was not really used for trade. It was used, I mean, it was the cowries that represented currency and that represented wealth and riches. So definitely that stood out. Okay. Seeing if we have any more. Ibn Ibrahim was critical because he didn't see true Islam, quote unquote. Okay. And so anytime someone looks out and doesn't see their beliefs reflected as, quote unquote, like I said, the truth or the true way that a thing ought to be done, we got whole movements around that throughout history and not just inside of Islam. All right, we've got, I see glass beads, Larabango Mosque, the context to the area, the people, and the ingenuity. Oh, looks like our time is up. Thank you all so much for participating, even though we're facing that little bit of a technical deficit. And like I said, that whiteboard was intended to have me scribbling in a way that probably would have been completely illegible to you all. Anyway, again, the beauty, yes, absolutely, the beauty of a thing, Janae, and its architecture. So thank you all for that. Let's move forward. And so we move into now our work of crafting your own praise song. Dun, 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 dun. Your homework for tonight is to actually look very closely at one of the items in particular, at least one of the items in particular on the Gold Road, and or a figure or an item that is near and dear to you. Oftentimes, art is most and best inspired by something that is already close to us and something that we are already passionate about, right? So something that brings you nostalgia, a memory of, like I said, it can be an object or it can be a person, it can be a place, something that carries a very dear memory for you, that means a lot to you, okay? And what we are going to do is have at least that one main subject at the center, and also consider that others may be introduced that might highlight certain qualities, either by comparison or contrast. So we're not even limited to just the one thing, because other items or other places, other people may help to serve to highlight or underline the importance of the one that you have chosen. Okay, so we have the key elements that we want to touch on inside of your praise song or your praise poem. I say song because I really hope that tomorrow somebody will come on here and either sing or rap or or something like that. But the idea is that you will produce a piece of art. The expression, like I said, in our first bullet, can be a song, a poem, rap, or even a work of visual art. You might be inspired to draw something. You might be inspired to sculpt something. There are so many talents among the nearly or over 100 participants that we have in the room today. It's open. All of them are open to you. And consider ways that we would open this up to our students as we present an activity or an experience like this. So our key elements are going to be praise names. You want to be able to call this person or this thing by more than one name, either something that is already known or something that you are going to name it. We want to think about nicknames, right? We want to think about things that this person may have been called, or if it's an object, think about common names that that object may be called in different places or in different regions. This thing is so well known that you may not know it by the same name here or there or these other places, but this is the same thing, right? So you also want to look at the genealogy, the background, the history, the either the bloodline, or like I said, with regard to an object, maybe the evolution of the craftsmanship that allowed this object to come about, or the history of the people and how they have developed their craftsmanship. Maybe have they moved from one place to another? We're really digging into some anthropology there. But, you know, go ahead and dig in and go for it. Poetic form. So we do want this to be in verse, as it were. We do want this to be something that shows up in a nice, neat way. It can rhyme or not. It's up to you, but flesh it out in a way that demonstrates an artistic component. That is our goal. And like I said, if you choose to do something visual, if you choose to do something in the form of a visual art piece, you would want that piece to have a theme that surrounds the person or that surrounds the object, that's going to allow us to be very clear of what you want to say about it and what you want your piece to reflect. Okay. We want proverbs. We want proverbs to be a part of it. So words of wisdom are connected. And you'll see in the next slide an example of what I mean by how we can bring all of these things together. And a refrain or a theme that, again, pulls all of it together. We can go to the next slide for the example. So this is what I have come up with. And the song that I had the idea of playing it in the background while I share it with you as that musical component, because it is not a song with a melody, as it were. But the song that I chose that connects most, and like I said, something that resonates for me, something that connects most with what I want to say about my significant figure, my significant person, is a song for Mama by Boyz II Men. So the title of this piece is The Matriarch, and it is a praise poem for Lillian Owens. And just for a little bit of background, Lillian Owens is my maternal great-grandmother, and that is an image of her. You have seen me. I am an African American, and you see her. So that gives you a little bit of an eye into my personal genealogy and my personal history there. And there's a little bit in our story that you will see about what connects us and how we are connected. So it begins, and we don't have to play the song in the background, Vanessa, but anybody who's familiar with that Boyz II Men song, and if you're not, please by all means look it up. It's called A Song for Mama. All right, so we'll begin. Sugar Ma, Grandma Owens, second daughter of Oscar Deason and Lily Holston. Patience is the mother of a beautiful child. Not once did one ever hear her yell. Quick, but never in a hurry. Strong, but never pushy. She could ease a raging beast with her smile. Mama, we love you always. The elephant does not limp when walking on thorns. Ever graceful, never bothered. They burned her home in Mississippi because she was Elwood's wife. The color of his skin and hers was a combination that the clan would not abide. Mama, we love you always. One who eats alone cannot discuss the taste of food with others. They fled to the industry of the North. Like Faran Tunkara, her door was open to those of good character, those in need of shelter, those in need of food where there was no shortage of conversation. Somehow, there was always enough for one more in the pot. Mama, we love you always. When you stand with the blessings of your mother and God, it matters not who stands against you. She taught us love and discipline, religion and spirit, support and challenge, compassion and a hard line. Ma, who cared for us all, 4 generations of legacy in her lifetime. Sugar, because she was so sweet. Grandma Owens, because she carried the name that carried us all and wrapped us up in who we are. Mama, we love you always. Oh.
So clearly when I wrote this, I didn't expect to go through what I'm experiencing now from reading it out loud. But that's the kind of emotion that makes a person or a thing memorable. And I thank y'all. But when I decided to sit down and think of something to share with you all, that's what came up. And this is why. So hopefully the things that you will think of to share will be things that are so meaningful to you. I'm gonna try to get myself together so we can finish. But so as we look into the details of what we have in our praise poem, you have the names. These are actual nicknames that my great-grandmother was called. We have proverbs. At the head of each verse is a proverb. That's an actual African proverb. We also have verse. We also have, you see that each one is broken down, and each verse speaks to the nature of the proverb that is connecting for us. So we are connecting the story, right? We're connecting the story with further description, but we're doing it in an artistic way. Faran Tunkara was someone who stood out for me in the Gold Road because he was the king of Mema or Nema, depending on how you would say it. He was the king of that part of the Ghana Empire when Sunjata and his mother actually fled in exile. And so he was the one who received them. He was the one who gave them shelter in their exile. And so that stood out for me as a connection, because also not only did he receive them and allow them to stay there, it was in his home where Sunjata Keita learned his military ways, his strategies, you know what I'm trying to say, his military strategies and tactics. And also when he left Mema, he was sent off with part of the army to help him in his campaign as he moved back toward basically reclaiming his throne and his heritage. So he was not only kept, but he was bolstered. You know, he came into his manhood at that court. So it's a really key role that he had. And so, like I said, that connected for me in terms of my great-grandmother's role in our family and in our community. She was one who, when she made a pot of food, she would make a call out to either blood or not blood, family and friends. And she would just let them know, I'm making chicken and dumplings. And anybody that wants to come on over. How that magical pot fit all of those people, I do not know, but there was always enough. And so that's the connection that I made with the Gold Road. And so if we can scroll it back, Vanessa, to the crafting your praise song. Absolutely. So we have the praise names, we have the genealogy, we have poetic form in the form of verse. We're using proverbs, and we also have the refrain. That was the other thing. We have that one line that always comes back. The refrain doesn't have to be long and complicated. It doesn't have to be, some entire verse unto itself. But if you want it to be, then so be it. You have that artistic freedom. That's basically it. I want to thank you all very, very much. I didn't put a concluding slide on the slideshow, but I want to thank you all very, very much for your time, for your energy, for your interaction. It's been really great and interesting through this virtual experience. I'm really more accustomed to having people in person to work with and exchange. I'm a big person. I'm big on energy. But I thank you all. I thank you for receiving what I've come to share. If there are any questions, I'm sure we can spare a moment or two, especially if we want to get some clarification on what we're looking for tomorrow. So Vanessa, I'm sure you can take it away.
Exactly. If you have any questions, please post them. Thank you so much, Lucina, for that heartfelt poem. It was beautiful. Like someone in the chat said, you had us all crying. Thank you. And thank you for being so graceful, being with all these technological difficulties and still pushing through. Thank you. And thank you for everyone for being patient. And we hope that you share a piece that is close to you as well. And just to reiterate that you can use the Gold Road kind of as the Gold Road map that we showed you yesterday as an inspiration for one of the different markers in any of the layers that the categories there, whether it's a person, architecture, or any of the 4 layers, a landscape even, and something that you connect to in your life, in your world. We would really love to hear that tomorrow. I look forward to hearing that tomorrow. Thank you so much, Lucina. And any other questions? Oh, someone just used that. Thank you, Dr. Cham. How do you say thank you? Anyone remember how to say thank you? Iniche. Jeff. Thank you so much. So if there are any questions, please post them. I will post the evaluation link for today so that you can go ahead and evaluate the day. And yes, any questions about the homework assignments? Tomorrow we'll have Dr. Cham. Brenda, and chime in if you like. Tomorrow we'll have Dr. Bai Cham, our very own Bai Cham, and we'll have Dr. Aisat, who will come back to do the language lesson that we missed out on Tuesday. And she will give another presentation with Dr. Cham as well. So we have lots of interesting things, and Dr. Jean Tungara will join us tomorrow. We look forward to hearing from all of those wonderful presenters. Brenda?
Just thanks to everybody. Thanks to our presenters, especially to David and Barbara out there in California. As I said, they practiced so hard, and you can see how intricate that presentation was. And this is among the first times that Dr. Conrad has been doing Zoom. So I appreciate that. And Lucina is just the center of our world whenever we're doing workshops, because you see the energy that she has and all that she brings to connecting students to the material. You know, thank you so much. And to Siddiqui for his language lesson, just wonderful. And of course, Jamie is in the background again, doing all of the technology. Dr. Bond, thank you for that eloquent way that you handle all of the questions. And Vanessa, none of this would happen without you. And I guess we can share the connection. So the evaluations are very important to us. We use them to improve what we're doing. We really appreciate hearing from you. And again, I don't know whether we said this, but you know, we are sponsored by the Department of Education. And so they're always looking for feedback about how these programs and these experiences work for you. And Kelly, did you have your hand up? Did you want to ask a question? Go for it.
I apologize. I had to stop and grab this guy. So I ended up missing Lucina's first presentation, and I really would love to see it eventually, but I definitely would like to see it if possible before the assignment for tomorrow. Is there any way that we could get access to that?
Jamie, are you there? Do you hear the question?
As soon as the link becomes available, I can forward it on to Brenda, and then they can distribute it the way they need to distribute it.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just like going by what, because unfortunately I missed the presentation where she shared the information about the jelly.
I have to email that to you today. Jamie,
okay, great.
When will you be able to get this to us, and then we could just email the whole list of participants?
Okay, I don't want to rush you with that, but it's okay to just use the resources that from the second presentation and just work on the project itself. Okay, thank you.
As soon as we have it, I'll send it out to everybody.
I appreciate that. Sorry about that.
No, not a problem at all. Emailing's best, I see. Yes, we shall. Any other questions? Is everybody able to access the link that I posted?
Did you put it in the chat box, Vanessa?
I did.
Okay.
All right. All right, so if there are no more questions, then I think we can call it a day. Today it's 12:35. We're ending a little early, and tomorrow we'll see you again at 9 a.m. prompt. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.